Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we've arrived at the temple at Mount Crest, a place that we're going for no adequately explainable reason. And the way the game explains it is that there's some crazy old guys that are having a fight over a teapot. So we've gone to set the record straight because we've got nothing better to do. Now, a lot of people really hate this dungeon for a lot of valid reasons. It's confusing, it's long, it's totally pointless in the grand scheme of things. Some of the enemies can really fuck you up. And while you do get a power here, it's one of the few powers that you never actually have to use in the entire game, and it's not very good. With that said, I actually rather like the power that you get here. I think it's cool. But I know that I'm in a minority on that. As for everything else about the dungeon, well, I don't like any of that. It does, however, have a pretty neat key and locked door substitute going for it, which we'll see later. Now, the big theme for this dungeon is mushrooms. And I find that kind of apt considering how crazy things get as soon as we come back. There are 4 types of enemies on Mount Crest. There are the silver and gold skulls. There are the spiders that we saw, the acid-spitting spiders. Gotta get that right. Gotta respect the acid. And there are the ghost pipers, which we'll encounter fairly shortly. The silver skulls move back and forth across the entirety of the level, and then turn around and go back the other way. One thing that people don't like about this place is that they can go off-screen. It kind of makes you think that you can permanently miss enemies, but you can't. They'll actually just turn around. Here's a ghost piper. As it plays its flute, ghastly flames surround it. When it dies, they converge upon the center and then fly out. They can still hurt you when they're doing that. The gold skulls move back and forth over a small area in a set pattern. They can fire blue fireballs from their eyes, and they're actually easier to kill than the silver ones, and that's about it. The acid-spitting spiders obviously spit acid. They can jump back and forth between platforms and spit acid. The acid actually blocks your way and hurts you whenever you touch it, but you can jump over it with a well-timed lunge of the flute. Now, while there's no good story reason as to why this dungeon exists, and it really is just kind of there to give you more gameplay, it's also, at least in my opinion, an apology for making you use Will for almost the entirety of the Great Wall. For this dungeon, you can use Fred for basically the entire thing and really wreck some shit. Which makes me happy. And that's why I don't like to bag on this place as much as most. It's a perfect place to try out our new Dark Friar ability. And in fact, the enemies are arranged as we go forward in order for us to cause maximum damage with our powers, like you saw there. Not that the initial hit from the Dark Friar wasn't enough to kill them dead straight away, but if it wasn't, they would have gotten hit with it twice. And, well, to be honest with you, when I was playing through this, and I made that particular hit, I did cackle with glee. Now, I suppose I could actually do this with Will, but if I did, I wouldn't be able to hit all the enemies, because sometimes the spiders just aren't going to come over here. They'll just hide somewhere where you can't hit them, even with a flute lunge, and then you're hosed and can't power up completely. The place is kind of labyrinthine, but I will show you the way. However, that is not the way. I'm actually going to go through that screen on the way back, because that is where the last red jewel resides, and where we'll transform back into Will at the end. The only thing we need Will for are getting in and out on those ramps that we used the spin dash on. Now, this place isn't as completely pointless as it looks. The key and lock gimmick for the mountain temple is the vines. The split-ended vines are like the locked doors, and the keys are an item called mushroom drops that we'll receive from various treasure chests throughout the level. When we use them, the split ends merge together and grow into a new bridge. It's kinda cool. I also rather like the aesthetics of the place. Walking around on vines is pretty cool and gives me a Final Fantasy Legend 2 vibe. And the glowing lights in the background and flashing colors are just kind of, you know, they're there. I want to know what the alien eggs are doing in the middle. But other than that, it's pretty cool. The music, of course, is nothing unique because this place isn't important in the slightest. Oh man, look at that Dark Friar. The Dark Friar explosion is just absolutely incredible. I love that move. It causes massive slowdown on the screen when there's lots of enemies, and enemies that fire projectiles, and it's just so devastating. If I had a couple more points of attack, which you can't really get without killing all the enemies, then it would be killing everything in one hit, which personally would make me laugh even more than it already does when I use it. Of course, the power that we'll be getting in this dungeon can kill all of these enemies in one hit. However, it's nowhere near as devastating for reasons that we'll see once we get it. I kind of miss that Fred doesn't have the flute lunge. He doesn't really have any ability to dodge, which is fortunately made up for by the ability that we're going to get in the dungeon. Conveniently, a way back appears there, so we don't have to take the long way. And this line of skulls falls and gives us yet another point of health. This place is filled with health increases. And in this chest, we will find our first mushroom drops. Alright, so if you'll recall the split end that we saw before, that is going to be our next destination. Conveniently enough, the shortcut put us literally right at the exit. Which, while this place is just kind of there to give you more gameplay time, it's a lot more fun than walking around Euro and learning a bunch of stuff that you don't care about and standing in a line doing absolutely nothing. I feel sorry for anybody who actually watches the Masochism Edition. No, I don't. Alright, so basically, at this point, we've seen everything that the dungeon has to offer. One of the other complaints about it is that it's really repetitive. And you can tell that they're just extending gameplay in this particular segment, but I actually kind of like the fact that they stuck it here rather than at the very end of the game, like lots of stuff does. The other day, I was finishing the Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney Investigations game, and the very end of it, it's just, you know the guy did it. You know there's no way he didn't do it. You figured out how he did it. But getting him to actually admit he did it just takes forever. Just arrest the dude. I much prefer just having a throwaway area in the middle of the game than unnecessarily extending the last part and not even doing it in a cool way. Once again, that's something that Tales games are kind of known for being guilty of. Especially Tales of the Abyss. Tales of the Abyss was a game in which there are a lot of dungeons tacked on the end that didn't need to be there. Not so here. There's just one. And fortunately, that red jewel in the last one was the last instance of having to do something completely counterintuitive in order to get a red jewel. Oh hey, more mushroom drops. Gotta go all the way back. No shortcut even appeared. But first we gotta finish off some enemies. I do like how the powered up Darkfire completely obliterates enemies now. And there's yet another point of health, which is useful because this time I ran into a bunch of stuff and could use it. Alright, halfway there. See, now, I'm not exactly certain how pouring the mushroom drops on one end of the stalk caused it to grow from the other end of the stalk. But I'm not going to question it too much. I don't really care at this point. Let's just go. The acid that the spiders spit is actually impassable. I may have mentioned that before, but it's kind of hard to remember. This place is so long for so little reason. But honestly, that was pretty cool. This is one of those dungeons where it actually helps if you're playing the game. Because it's a lot more fun to play through and use Fred's powers than it is to sit here and watch. And speaking of Fred's powers, we just got a new one. Yes, the Aura Barrier uses the power of Aura to put a barrier around you. So the way the Aura Barrier works is this. First you charge up like you're going to use a good ability, like the Dark Friar. Then you get into the middle of a group of enemies and tank a bunch of damage in the process. Then you stop. Then you hit L and R. You become temporarily invincible when you do it, and these two little mirrors fly around you that completely murder everything they touch. To be perfectly honest, I like the move. And I like to use it whenever possible, and part of that's just because I like using the abilities that are given to me, and the other part is that as far as defense goes, it's far more useful for Fred than just using his telekinesis. The problem being that you have to be completely stationary in order to trigger it, or else he uses said telekinesis and you probably just get hit some more and don't kill everything that's around you. It's a bad idea to run into a group of enemies and then fail to use the Aura Barrier. But it can hit things that are slightly out of range. And it does a good job against these guys, because it also protects you and sends away their projectiles. I lied, it doesn't actually send away their projectiles, but that would have been something that would make it cooler. And possibly more respected than it is. As a strictly defensive move, it's obvious just from looking at it that you're never going to have to use this move to complete the game. It's only one of two moves that you don't ever have to use to complete the game. And surprise, surprise, the other one is also Fred's. I figure it was probably a little difficult to keep thinking up useful powers for him when the Darkfriar is already heinously overpowered and can destroy everything in its path without a second thought. And right there you saw an example of what happens if you're moving and try to trigger the aura barrier. You just get hurt. Because chances are you were running into a dude instead of a projectile, and it's just bad for business. Here, of course, is using the aura barrier correctly, and just missing with it. There's actually a short period of time where you're capable of moving with the mirrors surrounding you, but at that point you're no longer invincible, and the mirrors quickly retract. Okay, more mushroom drops go. That is how you're supposed to use the aura barrier. It is a practical combat application. That said, I could have just as easily used the Darkfriar, and would have achieved the same result, but I would have taken damage. Now I know I'm supposed to take damage to save time and all that. However, I also learned from the Mega Man LPs that I'm supposed to use all of the weapons and items that I get, which is why I'm not using any herbs. Come to think of it, I'm probably going to have to use some herbs soon, because I'm going to run out of inventory to put key items in. And, of course, I'm not able to throw away stuff like the will. That other piece of paper, though, as soon as I remember, is straight out of my inventory. This place is also good for points for strength. You actually level up a lot in the Mountain Temple if you know where the enemies are. Finally, we've reached our objective. Hang on. Now we've reached our objective. Yes, we did all of this for a teapot. I wasn't just making that up. You know, and it's the real testament to the fact that this place is just here to take up time, with how long it takes you to cross the final bridge to get to the item. And here, like, every room you go into screams, "I want this to take as long as possible to extend your gameplay experience." But killing all the enemies doesn't open up shortcuts. So it's not like they're doing it so that you could spend more time as Fred and kill more things. You've already killed all the things. Well, I haven't killed all the things. I skipped one enemy in an area towards the beginning, and I skipped this entire area. Don't worry, I'll take care of that one remaining enemy once I get there. This isn't going to be another, Angel Village, Great Wall of China snafu thing. In this area, there is a red jewel to be found, and a dark space, where we'll change back into Will, so that we can get out of here. Here we are. Here's the dark space. Oh, another point of attack. Strength. I could change to Will right now, but I'm enjoying being Fred. There's only a few more enemies left. I'm gonna blast as many of them as I possibly can. Oh wait, there's one more enemy left. And it's not even in this room. Whoops. Well, he looks cooler when he's running anyway. There we go. As you can see, there's not much game left. Or rather, if you use our life bar as an indication, and assume that it'll be filled up by the time we reach the final dungeon, there isn't much left. In fact, there are 2 major dungeons left, 1 hidden, and the final dungeon. Only 2 of those are places where you can actually power up. I gotta say, I really like running down that ramp and then bouncing across the plant things. That's actually pretty cool. And this is where we need Will in order to get back. It's kind of easy to not notice, especially if you were a dumb kid like I was, and you could just wind up stuck on the mountain temple forever. And what we just kicked in the face was the last enemy in the dungeon. Everything's dead. Let's get out of here. Next time, though, things are going to get a lot more interesting, because next time, someone will die. Teapot.